How do you scream is still one of the biggest questions I get whenever I post anything structures or vocal related. So in today's vocal tutorial, I'm going to show you how to scream while sounding uniquely like yourself. I'm Brandon Pajazic and I play guitar and do vocals in the band Structures. I also perform bass and some backing vocals on Northling's Alien album, as well as that tour cycle. I've been screaming for about 19 years now, so I've learned a lot about my own voice, including what to do and what not to do. So I'm going to start the video with some stretches and warm-up exercises, followed by a breakdown of my vocal technique, and then finally full out yelling and screaming. I'll leave timestamps down below so you can skip to a certain section if you're interested, but I strongly suggest watching the whole video as it's packed with lessons I've learned from my vocal instructor as well as some things I've picked up along the way. So if any of that interests you, let's dive right in. So I've actually debated making this video for a while now because I want to make sure that the information I give is helpful and not damaging, and there's many ways to damage your voice and your body in general, but today we're not talking about weightlifting, we're talking about vocals. So I think of vocals in two different ways. The first way is like the voice acting approach, and it's more found in deathcore and death metal. It's super cool and it makes you sound more like a beast and like a gremlin, and it's less human. The second way is more of like a yell and a scream, and it's found in hardcore, some metalcore, and punk, and it's more the human emotional approach, and that's personally the way that I go about vocals. So I'll be teaching that today. They both require their own vocal technique, and neither is wrong. It's really just preference in whichever style speaks to you. So this is the approach that, like, say you're angry at someone and you're yelling, like picture when you were a kid and you get in an argument with your parents and you yell, or for instance, you hear a big bang in the middle of the night and you yell, "Get the f*** out of my house!" But you realize that it's not actually a person in your house and it was just a shampoo bottle that fell in the bathtub. This is the approach that I'm talking about, and I really prefer this one because you hear a lot more of the person's actual voice and it doesn't sound like a beast. It sounds like someone who's really emotionally angry and yelling. So I will say that this approach is quite loud, especially at the beginning when you're finding your comfortable spot and you're learning to project your voice. Projecting gets quite loud, so do this in a spot where you're comfortable and you don't feel like judged or anything, and you just like, you know you can go for it. Because personally, I only f my voice up in 3 different scenarios. One, when I'm trying to hold back and I don't want to go all out because I think that it'll be better and I'll be able to sustain and I end up hurting myself. 2, when I'm writing a song and I'm like 15 minutes towards ending a part and I feel my voice getting dry and softening up, but I just push myself to finish. And number 3, this used to always happen the first day of tour when I'm moving around like a friggin' wacky waving inflatable arm flailing tube man and I don't care, and then I end up being fine throughout the show, but then at the end of the show, I completely lose my voice. Let's begin, and I'll show you how to project and how to be safe about it. So the first thing, you wanna make sure that you're hydrated. Take general care of yourself. I know a lot of people say, don't drink caffeine, don't smoke. I know some vocalists that do not take care of themselves and they kill it on tour day after day. So obviously take care of yourself, but it's not like you won't be able to do vocals if you're not vegan. So before we begin like really the technique thing, it's really important to stretch and to warm your vocals up. So let's start off with the face stretching. This is a Melissa Cross exercise or warm up. So first what you're gonna do is you're gonna make your face as big as you can and then as small as you can. So we're gonna do 4 of those, so let's go. So you do 4 of those. The next one, you're gonna stick your tongue out and you're gonna go up and down. And you're gonna do 4 of those as well. And then we're gonna go 4 left to right. So now that we've done that, we're gonna stick your tongue out and you're gonna do 4 clockwise movements and then 4 counterclockwise ones, so. And then do the same thing, but with your tongue inside your mouth, just like on the inside of your lips, between your lips and your teeth. Got saliva all over me. And then by the end of that, you should feel it all in here. I never start a vocal session without doing that stretch. So next thing we're gonna do is Chris Lipe's warm-up exercise. I'll link it below because he has a whole routine. So basically you start with like where you're comfortable in that day. So you don't try to go too high, you don't try to go too low, and you're just gonna do the whole, You start with like your high comfortable falsetto and just ramp it down, and it's just whatever you're comfortable with for the day. There's more to this whole routine and exercise, but like I said, I'll link it down below. You can watch the whole thing. So after a while, once you've done that one and you feel a little bit more warmed up on either the piano or the guitar, you're just gonna go through some scales and some thirds just to warm up. If you don't plan on doing any singing, that's fine. Like, I just find it's a good warm up. You definitely don't want to warm up with screaming because that's like a sure way to blow your voice before you even start tracking or playing live. And then the next thing that I do that is like really my big warm up into screaming, a lot of it is coming from your stomach and your diaphragm, your chest, believe it or not, your back. It's screaming and singing in general are a full body thing. And I'm comfortable sitting or standing. If you're more comfortable standing, you do that too. Just make sure you're not pushing your neck forward. Keep it all straight. Take a big breath. And then basically I just hold out different consonant sounds like B's, SH, the sh sound, v, all that kind of stuff. So take a big breath. You're compressing a bit and making sure that you hold that sound out for as long as possible. And this is kind of the technique I use when screaming. That's why I like to warm up with it, because it's my technique before adding distortion. So before we jump into like screaming, I want to show you some things that my vocal instructor taught me. I went with like a jazz singer, and she taught me about how vocalists used to project their voice back in the days before microphones and speakers were a thing, when they were in a theater and they had to project so that the people at the front and the back could hear them. And a lot of that is in that technique where you're using your back, you're using your chest and your stomach. Pretend your throat is at the back of your head. Replace the idea of a throat with that. Basically, I'll put a picture up on screen what your uvula is if you're not too familiar. I had to look at a lot of gross images to get this one, so you're welcome that you don't have to look at it. So all the way at the back of your mouth, at the top of your uvula, that will give you like that full body sound, and then going forward at the top, like below your nose, that will give you that nasally sound. A full body E would be like, E, and then a nasally E would be like, E. And basically all I'm doing is controlling where that sound's coming from at the top of my mouth. Again, with an E sound, E. And that's basically just moving your attention from the back of your uvula to the front of it. And that's my approach when I'm doing like pitch screams and when I'm doing my lower ones and my higher ones. So now that we got all that out of the way and we know what a uvula is and we know all that important shit, let's get into the actual screaming. You don't have to be a singer at all. This is just the approach that I find helps in demonstrating what I'm doing vocally. And again, you want to be in a spot where you can project and nobody's around so that you don't feel self-conscious at all. And you project your low note, ramp the low note up to a higher note that you're comfortable with. Once you get to a high note, start adding distortion, and your distortion is coming from your chest. And it's all coming from here. I'm not doing anything in here. I know it might sound like it's coming from there. If anything, it's coming from the back of my neck. It's never coming from the front here. So again, low note, ramp it up to high note, start adding chest distortion. And of course, make sure you're taking a big breath. Yeah! And that's the whole approach. So that's my mid scream, I guess. When I'm doing my highs, it's the same approach. I don't obviously ramp up before I do every vocal take. It's just to show you my technique and to show you the easiest way to get to that point. And again, this is a style of vocal where you still have some of your voice in there. So for me, a band really stands out when one, their drum parts are super interesting, and two, when their vocalist sounds like nobody else. Some of my favorite vocalists include Sam Carter from Architects, Marcus Bridge from North Lane, Brendan Murphy from End and Counterparts, and Brian Garris from Knocked Loose. They all have like this approach where it sounds emotional and yelling, and that's why I gear towards those bands. And you can see after I'm doing a vocal, I'm still talking, I still sound the same. I'm not f***ing my throat up. And that's the most important thing. It's not in your throat. When I'm doing highs, it's the exact same technique, but I'm pushing my uvula more to the front. So my mid sounds like this. Yeah! My highs will sound like this. Yeah! And it's the exact same thing, except again, just doing that nasally, yeah, as opposed to, yeah. And then when I'm doing my lows, it's the opposite. I'm using the back of my uvula. Yeah! It's the exact same thing. Just like that distortion in the chest, a lot of the times the preamp and the distortion plugins you're using will get the tone that you want. This is just like using your voice to sound unique and to sound like you, but screaming, which is, I guess, what we're here for today. So I hope you like that. One thing to keep in mind, when I'm doing vocals, I've only done that little bit. I'm literally sweating already. I often sweat because, like I said, vocals, singing or screaming are a full body aspect. They're a full body activity. So again, to reiterate, don't hold back. Make sure that you're in a spot where you can do things comfortably and not feel judged or like self-conscious. Projecting is the biggest part. Don't overdo it. When you start to feel like your voice is getting fried, or when you start to feel dry, or like you're starting to lose tone, don't push it. I know sometimes you have a studio session and like you're like, I gotta finish. If you start to feel a little dry or messed up, the rest of the session is already done anyway. So just cut it and come back the next day or whatever. And yeah, all this is the exact same technique that I use when I'm doing like pitch screaming. So if you're at all interested in like pitch screaming, leave me a comment down below and I'll make sure to make a separate video on that. I feel like I shouldn't just cram it into here. It needs its own dedicated thing. So thank you so much for sticking around to the end. If you found any use in this video and you want to help support the channel, the best things you can do are like, comment down below, and subscribe. It really makes a difference in the algorithm and it'll help me grow this channel. So depending on when you watch this, and if there's enough interest, I'll leave a link for the pitch screaming tutorial right here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. See ya.